So as you saw from my introduction of Ken McElroy, I started with a small little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house. And I was very scared. And the point about being scared is I think fear is very common. And the question is, do you let fear stop you, or do you go through the fear? Because by facing that fear, that's how I grew. That's how I got smarter. So every time the fear came up for my investing, the question was, is it going to stop me, or am I going to go through it and grow? So the lesson number 1 is start small. I started 2-bedroom, 1-bath. Robert started with a 1-bedroom condo in Maui, Hawaii. Kenny started with a 2-bedroom place outside of Seattle. So starting small is really, really important because that's where I learned the principles, that's where I learned the fundamentals. So from the 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, we then created a plan. And the plan was very simple. 2 units a year for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, Robert and I would have 20 rental properties, and we would have enough cash flow to be financially free. We'd have more money coming in than is going out. We had the plan, so we started small, had the plan, and so we worked the plan. And our 10-year plan, from the 2-bedroom, I bought another condo, I bought another single-family house, then I did 6 units, then I did 12-unit apartment building, and grew it to, instead of taking 10 years, I did it in 18 months. So I got my goal of having 20 units, not in 10 years, but in 18 months. And today we have approximately 6,000 rental properties bringing cash flow into us every month. But what I would like to talk about today is one of our best performing properties. And I actually wrote about this property in my book, Rich Woman, which was published back in 2006. And this property today is doing so much better than I could have ever anticipated. It's like the property that just keeps on giving. Let me share this property with you. So in 2002, we bought a property which was a national fitness chain was the tenant. And the property there's also another lesson here, which is about location. The location of this property was 3 blocks from where Robert and I lived. And the reason that's important is because one of our other rules is we like to stay close to home whenever possible, especially when you're first starting out. Because for one thing, you're close to any problems. If a problem arises, you can go deal with it quickly, inexpensively, in most cases.
Well, the best thing about it was the best deal was right in front of us all those years. And what I say to most people, most of you are driving past your freedom every single day as you go to work. So we would drive past this property every single day and not see it until Kim one day, oh my God, it's right in front of us. It's the same as Cecilia on her fourplex. It was right in front of her. So most of the best deals are right in front of you if you can see them. But if you have no financial education, you can't see it right in front of you. Okay?
That's right. So it's 3 blocks from our house. We drive by it every day. And the other thing about having a property close by is you have your finger on the pulse of what's happening in the market. You see what's going on around you. So the numbers of this property, we bought the property for $7.2 million. We put down, as a down payment, $1.5 million, which means we had good debt on this property of $5.7 million. Now, why I say it's one of our best performing properties is today, this property throws off a cash flow of $50,000 per month. That's today. This is as this deal sits today. The beauty of this property, it's also what is called a triple net. And triple net means that the tenant pays for taxes, pays the insurance, and also pays all maintenance and repairs. You just collect the check every month. So on this property, we had a 17-year lease left with our tenant, and that lease comes due in 2019. So we also had on this property, our debt was amortized over 17 years. So when our lease is up, whether this tenant stays or does not stay, this debt goes to zero, and our cash flow so our cash flow, if the tenant stays right now, our cash flow would go now to $100,000 per month.
In a perfect world.
In a perfect world.
The thing that we have here, so she has her plan, she has an educational plan, but she has a finance plan. If you talk to Kenny, every time I'm talking to him, he has his finance plan is what I want to know. What is the ultimate finance plan? So that's what sophisticated investors are looking at. We didn't want to take the time out to 30 years because it might go dark. The tenant might move out. So since our lease was 17 years, we told the bank we want 17 years on the debt to fully amortize the loan. Goes to zero.
So before I go further and talk about the future of this property, which is really, really exciting, I wanted to have Tom come up and talk about the tax benefits as they stand here. Because you've seen this property, you're our tax.
I see this property every year.
Yes, you do.
Actually, and it is your best property, and it's best from a couple of standpoints. First of all, the $50,000 a month, that's really going in their pocket. I mean, I see it. It ends up at $600,000 a year. It's in their pocket. The other part is that I love the idea of amortizing the loan. So amortizing the loan means it started at $5.7 million, but the extra $50,000 a month, rather than taking that and putting it in their pocket, they did something that was a very smart, safe move, which was they paid down the debt. So that should that tenant not renew, or something happened and there was no tenant to renew at all, or even if it just was like they had to go for a year and a half while something got built, and they didn't have a tenant, then they wouldn't have a payment, So they'd own it free and clear, and all they'd have was taxes at that point, right? Just property taxes. So I love that part of this, That's a very smart thing to do. The next part of it is the tax side of it. Now, from a tax standpoint, in every country, the best tax benefit is on real estate. It's true in every country I've ever been to, and I've been to many, many, many countries. What's great about it is Kim and Robert put in $1.5 million, but they get a tax benefit on the entire purchase price. The tax benefit in the U.S. is called depreciation. In some countries, it's called a cost recovery, But it's always there. So depreciation is an incentive from the government to do what the government wants you to do, which in this case is own commercial property, The government sees that as good from an economic standpoint. It's good for the public. You're providing fitness in this case, so very much a good thing to do public policy-wise. And so the government gives professional investors this benefit, say, look, you go out and develop this, you go out and provide this property to the public, we're going to give you a tax benefit. That's exactly why Donald Trump, when he says he doesn't pay tax, that's why he doesn't pay tax, because he has property and he has debt, and the combination of those two eliminate his taxes from his business. And I'm going to show you just how that works here. So at $7.2 million, remember, the depreciation is a percentage of the cost of the building over a period of time. The depreciation is not based on the down payment. It's based on the full purchase price. The bank gets no tax benefit out of this deal. The bank just gets its interest and its amortization. All of the tax benefits go to the person who's taken the risk, who's partnered with the government to buy or develop this building, in this case, Robert and Kim. Robert and Kim, through their entity that they hold it in, because they're going to have an entity, Garrett will talk about that, but they're going to hold this through an entity, but it's going to be held in such a way that they receive the tax benefit, because it's very important that they get the tax benefit, not the entity. And I'll get to that in a second. I'll show you why. So let's say you've got a $7.2 million building, which is what Kim and Robert had. When you bought it, you paid $7.2 million. It's the purchase price that counts. It's always, we call it historical cost. It's what you paid for the property. I would expect, with good tax advice, that the amount of depreciation deduction would be about $720,000 for the first few years on this property. But you should be getting about 10% of the purchase price. As their tax advisor, I'm paying really close attention to make sure that they're getting the maximum tax benefit as fast as possible. Okay, because it's not just they want a tax benefit, they want their tax benefit as fast as possible. So this $720,000, remember, after their payment, which is at the beginning mostly interest, so it's deductible, after their payment, they're only receiving $600,000 a year, $50,000 a month. So if they get $600,000 a month, what that means, $600,000 a year, what that means is that they have $600,000 of income from the property, but they have a $720,000 expense or deduction. Well, that means that none of that $600,000 is taxable. It's all tax-free. But it's better than that, because in their case, because they're professional investors, on their tax return, they actually show a $120,000 loss. So imagine they have $600,000 of cash flow, but on their tax return, it shows a $120,000 loss. Because Kim's a professional real estate investor, she can take that $120,000 loss and offset other income from books, from speaking, from their business. And in a 40% tax bracket, that's worth an additional $48,000 a year. We call that phantom income, because it's taxes that they would have paid on other income that instead of paying it to the government, they get to put it in their pocket. So instead of $600,000, we get to add the $48,000. So they actually have cash flow from their property of $648,000. But there's actually one other type of cash flow you have to pay attention to, and that is that this debt's going down. That amortization is really additional cash flow because it's money they're putting in their pocket by paying down the loan.
So as Kenny said, our tenants pay off our debt. That's the definition of good debt. The people on the E and the S side have bad debt, consumer debt, credit card debt, car loans, student loans, and all that. But what the rich want is good debt, so that somebody else pays it off for us. That's the definition. They amortize our loan.
Oh, Garrett, Tom mentioned that we don't own this personally. We have it in an entity.
Correct.
Why do we do that?
For asset protection. If Kim and Robert owned it in their individual name, and I know all of you know this, if they were sued by 24-Hour Fitness or another tenant, they would be personally responsible. So if someone comes into the place and falls, 24-Hour Fitness is primarily responsible, but there's a case where you could be sued. As well, if Robert or Kim got sued individually, this is an asset they would go after. So Robert and Kim own this great property, and the poor and middle class want to own property in their individual name. That's not how the rich do it. The rich use the rules to protect themselves. In the United States, you use an LLC. The rich will take title to the property in the name of an LLC. This is how you protect yourself in the United States and all other countries. An LLC has a manager. Someone has to manage this entity. In this case, it's Kim. The owners are Robert and Kim, not on title to the property. They are owners of this entity through other entities for greater protection. This is how you do it when you're part of the rich class and you don't develop the poor and middle class mentality of having property in your individual name.
So, Garrett, what you're saying is if Robert and I had this property in our name, had a lot of properties in our name, and we get in a car wreck, and we get sued, the poor and middle class that have everything in their personal name, anything in their personal name is now at risk.
Correct. The claim, the car wreck claim, is against you as an individual. If you as an individual own lots of assets, someone can reach all of those assets. By using the LLC, you're creating a firewall against someone coming after these very valuable assets.
And that's the way the rich do it.
It's the way the rich have always done it. They want control through the manager spot, but they don't want ownership in their individual name.